Hello, Dominic here from the Bournemouth Writing Festival. Welcome to another chat with a local author, writer or writing professional here in the local area of Bournemouth. Now, I'm planning to release one of these every Monday evening around 6 o'clock. So if you want to be automatically notified of when a new chat gets published, then please remember to click the subscribe button. It's down there somewhere. And then I think you get an email every time it gets published. So please do subscribe and you'll find out when the next chat is. And today I'm really excited to be talking to Erni Salleh, who is Bournemouth based, but originally comes from Southeast Asia. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about that a little bit more. So Erni, welcome.
Hello, hi. I'm Erni and I'm actually from Singapore. So I'm really excited to be here and talking a bit about my writing journey.
Well, welcome. So you're one of the people who are brilliant because you have gone 2 feet into the writing world. I think on your website you say you started writing when you were 12, but you're a librarian, you do storytelling in museums, you're an author. So yeah, tell us about your writing journey.
So yes, Dom, you're right. So in my previous life, I started off as a children's librarian, and I think that was one of the reasons why I got really involved in children's literature. However, my first book was an adult fiction, and that was part of a competition. So it's one of those things that when you are a new writer, you're trying to test your feet, and you just submit your manuscript. Who knows, maybe someone might like it, and then someone did like it and they decided to publish that. So it was shortlisted for this prize, and then I got my first book published. And I think that gave me a sort of a taste for getting my voice heard. And so because my primary interest is in children's literature, so I decided, right, now it's time for me to write what I always wanted. And at that time, I was working as a mobile library manager. So my middle grade book is actually about a traveling library. So it's kind of, fits in. And so throughout my career, I've always noticed that within the literature or the publishing trend, there was always this missing like minority voice. And I thought, all right, I'm in the perfect place to write something that features a character like me. And so that's what my middle grade book is all about. It's a 4-part series. And in the first book, they actually go to Bangkok. And then the next one, they'll go to China and so on and so forth until they get here to the UK, almost like paralleling my journey from Singapore to here.
So it's almost like a memoir.
Almost. So I always think that writing, you put yourself, a little bit of yourself in writing anyway. Yeah.
So it sounds like you've been completely surrounded by books, like right from an early age all the way through.
Yeah.
And I love that you have on your website, you talk about the Dewey Decimal Classification System, because I actually learned a little bit about that at university, but that's a completely different story. So I'm sure, so did you read loads that when you were, when you were manager of the mobile library and you were chatting to people all the time, how did that influence you and your writing?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Yes, so, well, I guess being situated in Singapore, we had, of course, the kind of diversity in, books or publications that we might not get here. So we had books published in 4 languages, and that was available to anybody. And so at a very early age, I was reading various languages in a way. And so talking to people and then recommending them books, both in like books that were published in the UK or the US, but also locally or regionally published books. And I think increasingly in the last, say, 5-10 years, there is an increasing appetite for that sort of more local or regional flavor. And I think that has certainly influenced how I write. So I don't just write stories that appeal to, say, like a general public. I want to bring sort of like my cultures or like the regional cultures into that story, but also writing a story that someone, say, living in Malaysia or Indonesia would say, oh, that's about me, even though it's not about them, but this, that's more connected to it. Yeah.
I was gonna ask you about how you weave culture into your stories, because as you said, that the traveling library book follows your own journey through Bangkok and China all the way to Bournemouth. So why is it important for you to infuse culture into your storytelling?
Well, first and foremost, I think it reflects the kind of upbringing that I had, and it's always important to have a part of you in the book, because you don't know, somebody else might read it and feel seen. So that's always the primary one. And then the second one is, I think, because obviously I'm traveling to all these countries and not all of them are cultures that are my own cultures. So it's important to be sensitive in how I describe another culture, and to show a child that, you know, you can engage in all these world cultures, and how can you do it in a very, you know, wholesome and sensitive way. So it's doing research, it's like, you know, maybe learning a bit of the language, tasting the food, you know, all this sort of things. And yeah, I'm just like a fan of culture in general, because coming from Singapore, it's, you just sort of become one with the world. Yeah.
Sure. And it's not just culture that weaves through your stories either, it's social justice and climate justice. So talk to us a little bit about why you put those into your books and why it's important to you and even your readers.
Yeah, so I think the social and climate justice bits were quite a recent thing for me. So that happened because I moved here and became exposed to a lot of these ideas at work, but also just in general, reading a lot of books and interacting with people on BookTok, which we'll talk about a bit. Um, and I think that awareness made me realize that I have to talk about this in my book. So on the traveling library journey, we talk a bit about what does it mean to be green on the road, because, you know, they are traveling around the world, and are they going to just throw the rubbish everywhere? And it's just small things, but I made a list of, you know, oh, this is what we should do. And hopefully as a child reading it, this like sort of triggers that little bit of activism perhaps in them. Yeah.
So how could you explain maybe a little bit how you put that into your storytelling, where it's not like a lesson or you're not kind of ramming it down people's throats, you know, so the children when they're reading it don't just think it's, well, you know, I'm trying to be influenced there. How do you make it part of the story, I suppose, is the question.
Yeah, well, I would say it's not easy. I think it's always a challenge, right, for all authors not to be too didactic in your writing. Um, and so I would do it kind of, so I've done it in a way where it's like a game. So because the character is 11 years old and she's been taken out from school, so as a character, she's desperate to do homework almost. So her grandfather gives her a task. He says, right, why don't you come up with your own ideas of how we can be green? And so the character goes through this journey, and every time that something happens, it's like a almost like naturally she comes to the conclusion. So it's not like forced on the reader. So I hope that has given the readers a much more palatable way of, yeah, experiencing it.
And you mentioned there so briefly, and this is such a lovely cultural thing, that it's the grandfather talking to the grandchild, which is intergenerational, which is lovely. You know, it's something which I don't even think about putting into my stories. But you mentioned BookTok very briefly there, and I really want to explore more about your marketing, because you do a fantastic job, not just on TikTok but on Facebook, and you know, and it's not just online. You do so much stuff in person as well. You do school talks, you do stuff in the libraries, and you've only been in Bournemouth for a few years. So tell us your strategy to get yourself out there, you know, and to sell books, I suppose.
Yes, so on the topic of book talk, I think lots of authors make a mistake of which they've got a book now and they're just going to go on book talk and then suddenly talk about it like 24 hours. But I think you have to build a momentum. So you have to start off as a nobody, start off reading other people's books, recommending books, and then sort of, if you want to use TikTok as a platform, you have to be really involved in it. So be involved in the conversations, interact with other book talkers, you know, go to festivals. I must say the festivals here that are just book talk festivals are amazing, and there's such a good opportunity to meet people whom you know will like your book and then be the advocates for you even before you start the marketing. So have that set up, and then pick a niche. So don't just, say I read everything, because I do read everything, but I focus my book talk on, say, Asian books, because that's what my books are going to be about. So I built this community, and then when it comes to promoting a book, you already know who you can sort of trust. And you can send out your books to them, get them to talk about it, rave about it. Because I think the trick is people don't want to hear from you how good your book is. They always want to hear from someone else. So that's that. And then I think locally doing that work it's a lot of work, because my books are not published here, so I have to do extra work to get people to be aware of it. So sort of inserting myself in conversations, whenever I'm at the library, for example, I'm like, hey, and then doing free talks, whether at the library or in a school. And the idea is, while I want to sell lots of books, I also want to just have my name at the back of, say, a teacher's mind or a librarian's mind, so that can increase your visibility.
So you really are building a brand for yourself. And I have to admit, I'm not into TikTok at all. BookTok, everything you said about BookTok is another language to me. I just don't understand. It's a different world. And maybe that's a really big mistake that maybe I'm missing out on, even with the Bournemouth Writing Festival. So you do a range of things. I think BookTok is probably your most successful marketing tool. But tell us about the things that you found that have worked and what haven't worked.
So on BookTok, you mean?
On any part of your marketing. So I imagine kind of having to talk to schools, that's quite time consuming. I'm sure, I don't know, maybe schools, you get a lot of rejection. What have you found, or maybe what advice would you be giving to the people watching this?
Wow. So I do admit that going to schools can be quite difficult, because they're just so busy with the curriculum. So going to the libraries could be a good way for you, though, and the local bookshops. So I've not gone to the local bookshops yet, because obviously I have to get my books in here. But going to the library is a good space just to get people to realize that your book is available, even if they can't afford it. So that to me is quite important. And then in terms of marketing on BookTok, it is challenging, I must say. So I have made sure that whatever I do on BookTok, I don't replicate it on Instagram or Facebook. So they're all different, but then it does take a lot of time. So you have to make sure you are willing to put in that work. And you can choose your favorite platform if you want. You don't have to do BookTok, although I do think that going on to BookTok, you might get a different group of people. But yeah, if you pick your platform, you have to work hard for it. And there will be times when you feel like it doesn't give you the reward, but keep pushing, push out content every day, every week, just so it comes out on people's radar. Yeah.
It's such hard work doing that, and so many writers, I meet so many writers who are really good at writing, but they don't understand the social media, or they don't understand the marketing side of it, because actually writing the book, and this is going to sound really weird, it's probably the easy part. It's the hard part is actually getting out there into the world and getting people to notice it, build awareness. But what you're doing, which is what I love, is you're building that brand. It's not just about the book, it's about you as a personality. And as you say, going to festivals and meeting people and all that kind of stuff. It's a long game, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, just to add to that, you're right. Writing the book is its own beast. And then talking about the book is another thing. So I know you probably can't tell, but I'm an introvert. I don't like talking about my books to people. But then it's become a thing now where people will ask you, so what's your book about? And you have to do the elevator pitch, right? And I don't want to talk about it. But it forces you to be almost like another person, but to be an advocate for yourself.
Well, that is incredible. So what are your future plans?
So I have to still write book 2, 3, and 4 for the children's book, but I am working on another manuscript, which could be like a YA fantasy. We'll see. I kind of don't like to restrict myself to say, oh, now that I'm only writing middle grade, I'm only going to stick to that, or I've written adult, I'm going to stick to that. I think sort of exploring all the genres, the different sort of age groups could be interesting. And I think as a librarian, that kind of, excites me as well. but yeah, so that's the main one. And then who knows? I might continue to write another children's book. We'll see.
Wow, and who knows? The world is your oyster after that. So brilliant. Thank you so much, Ernie, for joining me today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It was so nice to have a chat with you and just be part of this community.
No problem at all. And to everybody else, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, please click the subscribe button below, and the next interview or chat with a local writer, author, or writing professional will pop into your inbox automatically. So until then, thank you so much. Goodbye. Take care.